Hello, everybody, and welcome to What's the Story podcast. This is WTS 276. My name is Danny Murray.
And I'm Graham Merrigan. We're nearly at number 300.
Nearly.
Oh, I think we've produced 300 even with the old 600.
We're about 320 something. We're definitely well over the 300 mark in total, but in terms of our numbered events are
you have to get someone absolutely ginormous for episode 300.
For episode 100 we done a live show. For episode 200 we had the great Michael Conlon, who will be fighting in the coming months in his hometown of Belfast. So for episode 300,
so who we get for 300?
We'll have to think of something special then. We kind of build these up, don't we, that we kind of have to do something like.
Yeah, Katie Taylor.
Yeah.
Anyone has a contact for Katie Taylor out there, send me a message. Drop into my DMs.
Yeah, on a completely side note, Dan, if anybody also has any way of reaching out to Margot Robbie, can you drop into my DMs as well?
Imagine.
I'm doing good, Graham Merrigan. I'm doing very, very good. Would you like to hear a tale of my antics in a swimming pool?
Oh yes, go on.
Right. So, as we've
talked about, so context, you've started swimming.
Yes. So as we've talked about on the podcast, I had surgery. Everything's going well. Everything's doing good, but I'm not allowed to do anything yet that's still like overly kind of exerting, shall we say, because my insides are still healing. So I've been told I can do resistance work in a swimming pool, which I'm all for.
Resistance?
Yeah, because in the water, you know what I mean? It's not too... Anyway, so like no bother at all. Excellent. So I was doing swimming. Swimming's going great and everything. And then I happened to be in the swimming pool at the same time as an aqua aerobics class. And I decided, why not? And it was just me and 11 women, where the average age was definitely about 70. And I was getting dodgy looks all over the place, but I've been back twice since.
No way. That is hilarious.
So I've taken to aqua aerobics, Graham, and I'll be honest, I'm making fools of them old people.
Fools. Can we get a vlog over the line of this aqua aerobics?
You can certainly try. I'll do a TikTok. But yeah, like you know what I mean? There's this bit where they're asking us to kick our legs and get our legs up out of water and all that. And I am making shite of those old people who have hip issues and everything. Making shite of them. This is
good for your knee as well, Danny.
It is good for my knee as well. That's the main reason I'm doing it, because I had a chat with the physio and whatever, and they were like, you can laugh, but it's actually one of the best things you could probably do in terms of, you know, improving your stability with your knee while not damaging it further. So I was like, grand, I'll stick on my little swimming hat and look like a weirdo in a pool full of L1s. I don't mind, like, you know what I mean?
Swimming hats always used to prevent me from swimming because I have a mallet head and the swimming cap looks terrible on my mallet.
I have a giant head. It's as if somebody has tried to fit a tiger into a condom. It is absolutely ridiculous looking. Honest to God.
A tiger into a condom? Oh, Christ almighty.
Anyway.
Do you miss stand-up, Danny?
Do I miss? No.
As in, do you miss writing stand-up?
Oh, I miss writing, yeah. Like, there was a period where I was writing bits for other people and whatever, but it's just...
Really?
Yeah. But, like, it's just... Nah. It's weird because, like, when I was doing it and writing material for other people, and then you went on the receiving end of the laughter and the claps or whatever, because that's what it's, you become a little addict, you know what I mean? You get a little buzz off that kind of thing. So when you do a gig and you know, you do a room of a couple of hundred people or whatever, and you like the laughter comes in waves, and as it comes back at you, and you kind of, you know, you get a little buzz off that.
That's mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I only asked there because of the tiger and the condom content was quite entertaining.
Very good.
Danny, we've a mad one this week.
Now for something completely different, as they say. Yeah, this is. I don't think anybody, if we were to ask any of our regular listeners and subscribers, you can subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all those places, lads. Give us now a like and a review and all that kind of crack. 5 stars, please and thanks. Love you. But if we were to ask those people who regularly listen, what is the one topic myself and Graham will never ever cover? I would imagine this would be in the top 5 answers we get back.
So a big thanks to Cormac Hall for this. We spoke to Miriam Burke of the podcast A Little Birdie Told Me. Joining us this week now is presenter of podcast A Little Birdie Told Me, Miriam Burke. How are you, Miriam?
Fine, thanks. How are you?
Excellent. Thanks for coming on the show. You are a co-host of A Little Birdie Told Me podcast, and you're going into the second season. Is that right?
Yeah, we are launching season 2 soon, after a very successful season 1. I'm happy to say, loads of interesting guests. Yeah.
And what is A Little Birdie Told Me about?
So, it's A Little Birdie Told Me podcast. Is the podcast for the website rollercoaster.ie. I'm the editor, and it is a parenting and pregnancy and kind of family website. So that is what the podcast is as well. My co-host tonight, Evine, is my co-host. We are both parents of young kids. So basically it's free therapy for us. So no, honestly, like we got guests on to talk about basically everything that we needed help with, sleep, food, breastfeeding, all that kind of thing. So luckily the listeners are also interested, because there's a lot of parents out there and of young kids as well who, modern parents these days are really I suppose anxious and stressed about the whole am I doing it right thing. If you're putting pictures on Instagram or whatever, like, you want it to be, you're doing it right, or else don't put pictures on Instagram because that's not right. It's an absolute minefield. So the point of the podcast is to just chat all about it. Yeah.
Brilliant. So it's like you're dropping your kid off to creche, and you're talking to other parents about lived experiences, and then you're actually just putting that on the podcast and letting people out there know, look, you're doing it right, everything's okay, type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's like kind of, suppose we want to break taboos a little bit. We're really honest. Even and I are just kind of open books about it all and admit mistakes, because there's no, well, I don't want to say there's no right and wrong, because there's definitely sometimes definite wrongs. But you can make mistakes, and you do, mess things up a bit, and you do wonder as well what the hell you're doing. And yeah, so we kind of, the purpose of it was for us to share our experiences, ask the experts like what their opinion was, and just let the people listen, and hopefully they would get some useful information from it, really.
As two non-parents, I'm always, like myself and Mero kind of talked about before, because like a lot of our mates that have kids and a lot of our family and that have now got like young and sort of grown-up children now even. But like, I'm always fascinated by that conversation that happens when like a group of parents, particularly of younger kids, get together. And it's that thing of, there's a few of them who are kind of almost like Vietnam War veterans who have seen it all, done it all. Then you've got the ones that are kind of in the middle phase. And you've got the kind of the newer parents who are still kind of optimistic and still kind of like everything's all exciting. And all they're getting barraged with is the whole thing of, wait till the sleepless night start. Wait till school, wait till the terrible tools start. So like, what kind of advice and conversations are out there for like the parents who are in that early stage? And then I might ask about the older lads now in a minute.
Yeah. God, we have it all. Like, so the sleep is just one of these questions that, like, no matter how many kids you have, because every child is different, and every parent is asked, are they a good sleeper, or like, are they sleeping 7 to 7? For what it's worth, my child doesn't do that, and never has, and he's 2. But like, it's amazing, the resources out there. Like one of the episodes we talked to Erica Hargadin is her name, and a lot of parents like ring bells because she's kind of sleep expert of Ireland, and Babog Sleep Solutions is her business. And like I have to say, when I was going into that conversation, I was a little bit like skeptical because I don't believe in crying it out. Like, I don't know if you know what crying it out is.
It's just the thing where you just, rather than comfort them, you just let them sort it out themselves and kind of keep crying until they fall asleep or something.
Yeah. Which, like, when you put it like that, it just sounds really cruel. But, like, in fairness, parents do it when they reach complete breaking point, because, like, even if you don't have kids, you know what it's like to be sleep deprived. And when you do have baby and you just don't know when it's going to end, like that can be absolute torture. So this woman, Erica Hargadin, she has this lovely business, and we spoke to her about it and gave really good tips that doesn't include cry it out, like, because parents don't really want to do that anymore. But she does, say what else you can do and acknowledge that you are, it's okay to feel overwhelmed about it all, because that's what happens when you have a baby and they won't sleep when you want them to sleep. But it's funny the things you learn about it, and as in like being a parent, that your baby is a little person, they have personality, and even if that's the kind of what was amazing to me actually when I had my own, because I wasn't really that used to other children, and my friends had them as well, but I kind of kept my distance a bit because I've said that I would I would do the whole child thing when I had my own. And but it's just having it and being there and seeing them grow and being like, oh my God, it's not just a baby, it's a little person with a personality, and they don't sleep, but look at they're cute, that kind of thing.
That's how I look at my dog, Miriam.
Oh.
You're saying there that your friends had kids and stuff like that, and you kind of sat back a bit. Was that a conscious thing to do?
Do you know what? Kind of, like, I just didn't feel that maternal. There's some people who are just so good at kids, men and women. Like, I have friends who were just like, as soon as they saw a baby, be like, "Oh, give me." For me, I'd be like, "Oh, got a bit of a cold. I don't think I should be carrying holding a baby. If I do, sorry." Like, the first baby I held was my own. So it's funny the way you adapt and grow and feel things naturally like that.
Have you found?
So,
I was going to say, have you found that's kind of changed then as well since you had your own? Because I'd be very similar to you in terms of I'd be really standoffish. Like, I've got I've got one niece, I've got a couple of godchildren, that kind of thing. But until they get to like 7 or 8, and you can kind of you can figure out their sense of humor and you can have a bit of crack and all that, I am terrible. I am like I say hello, but I talk to them like they're adults. I'm like, "Hello, how are you? Are you feeling well? Yes, everything's good. Good, glad to hear it." Yeah. Like, I'm brutal at it. Did you find that kind of standoffishness that you described that eroded maybe when you had your own child?
Yeah, I did, and I was surprised. But it was just because I was hanging out with a child every day, like 24/7, and that was just, it kind of gave me the confidence to know, oh, I can handle another small child, read a book with them or play blocks or whatever. It is easier when it's your own because you can do what you want to do and dictate the playing, I suppose. So you don't have to feel self-conscious about it, because like, it's funny feeling self-conscious around children. I remember that being like, oh, they probably think I'm a big fool, and it's like
the judgment of a toddler is often the worst judgment I find.
Yeah, I know.
Nothing worse than being told you're silly by a 4-year-old,
I know. But we talk a lot about toddlers on the podcast because one of us has one. And I think when you think of toddlers, you think of terrible twos, and tantrums, and that's just constant. And sorry to break it to you, what it actually is. My little boy is at the no stage where it's just no, no, no. And we did talk to Aoife Lee. She is her business is called Parent Support, and that's exactly what you need, just like support. And she guides parents through those difficult phases where the child, those situations where the child is having a meltdown, like in the supermarket floor, which like happens a lot.
I didn't even know that existed, like support.
Yeah.
Things like that. It's mad.
No, it's brilliant. Like that is, Aoife Lee, she is on, some listeners might recognize the name, she's on Ireland AM as a parenting advisor, and Today FM as well. And she just has these like amazing, no nonsense guides basically to when your child is kind of acting up, because it's all about this regulation and their little brains developing, and you don't want to punish them. It's not, we don't really do that anymore.
Yeah, and do the terrible twos exist? Do the terrible twos exist?
So we don't like talk about it that way anymore. It's more as in like the terrific twos. They just have little their little minds are kind of in overdrive, That's what a modern parent is. We're getting down to their level, and it's so American. So many is kind of funny phrases, but they actually do work. You get on their level and talk to them, to their eye to eye, and relate to how they're reacting, and
And the podcast is like primarily about parenting, but do you guys cover pregnancy as well?
Yeah. We do. So 2 episodes, like really helpful ones that I wish I had, listened to them when I was pregnant, was we had a really good one about nutrition during pregnancy with Dr. Michelle Hone. She runs a company called the Fit Clinic, and she spoke to us just all about, actually she spoke to us about preparing for pregnancy. So for those of you who are kind of just thinking about that, the supplements to take and exercises to do and all that kind of thing, and the same throughout pregnancy, what you just basically how to keep yourself healthy, and then by what you eat, what you're consuming really, and then what you're kind of doing with your body, I suppose. And we spoke to a physiotherapist, Caroline Chambers, who also spoke to us about the movement during pregnancy and what to keeping fit. And even if you're not, because women who are pregnant who weren't fit, as in going to the gym or doing marathons, whatever, before they're pregnant, are suddenly told exercise but not too much, and then it's like, what do you mean, what can I do? And anyway, Caroline Chambers had really, really good tips on what you can do, and not scary tips, and manageable, and the kind of thing that you feel good about knowing and doing, and feel good about doing after as well. So
I'm a wheelchair user, so I have a lot of friends with physical disabilities that are now parents, and I never said it to them personally or whatever, but I wonder if they needed some sort of guidance along their journey of either getting pregnant or being parenting and stuff like that. Like you're in a wheelchair, how can you hold a baby and push, or just the kind of things that other people probably wouldn't consider. I wonder if there is someone out there that you could talk to, maybe.
Yeah, look, that's a really good point, and a really good topic to bring up. You're so right. Like, I'm sure there are people with different abilities who are wondering those things, the same as anyone is wondering. So yeah, I mean, I'd love to chat to a guest primarily about that, but also like if there are listeners who are thinking about that, well, are the people we've already spoken to. You can find all of our guests on our website on rollercoaster.ie. There's a section of the podcast, and you can see all the guests who've already been there. And I'm sure there are guests who will be able to cover that anyway if you get in touch directly.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's such a good point. We need somebody on for season 2 or season 3 to chat about that kind of thing.
Go on, Meryl. Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, is it a myth that it's only the woman that wants children?
No. Is it a myth?
Like, yeah. Like, I mean, like, do men like you always think that it's just always the woman that wants a child. That's completely wrong, isn't it?
Meryl's playing into a big stereotype here. The big
I know.
women and the reluctant male, and man, come on. 2022, Meryl.
Well, I say that as someone who has never pined for kids, but I could be persuaded.
Then again, like, remember, I didn't either. I didn't feel that maternal or anything. I didn't have that like urge the way some people do. So some women do, being stereotypical about it. There are definitely guys who are the drivers of it in relationships.
That's what I meant, the drivers of it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I know some who are the ones who are kind of like, let's do it, and the woman is a bit more reluctant. But like, unfortunately, the woman kind of has more of the time not on her side, which makes the decision more, I don't want to say urgent, but you get to a certain age and then it's like, oh, better seriously think about this. When men typically have a bit more time.
Yeah.
Although our guests, especially the nutrition guests, will actually say, and we spoke to a nurse and a lab manager from Sims Clinic, which is a fertility clinic, who tell us that people who come to them to do kind of starting, what can I say, like to start off the process, not even to start off the process, but to get analysed sort of and see where they are fertility wise. It's equal men and women, just seeing how their fertility is basically, and how many years they have to go traveling and like do fun things before settling down. So men are definitely thinking about it, and at a young age too.
I'd say that kind of stuff is, and like with things like fertility treatments like IVF and is it ICSI, I think is the other one, is that there's the two different fertility thingies, I think. But it seems like one of them that kind of there's now more options for people who, because again, I don't want to play to stereotypes at all, but if you look at kind of that idea of like a traditional kind of home or whatever, it was, like the woman would be the one responsible for the children, blah, blah, blah. But increasingly we're seeing more and more women get more involved in the workplace, build a professional career and have children later in life, rather than having them kind of early 20s, mid 20s. They're now possibly, into their 30s before they're having their first child. And stuff like IVF and whatever probably helps with that in terms of there are fertility issues. So when you guys spoke to the people from Sims, did they sort of say that there was a pattern kind of similar to that, or was it more just a general chat about their fertility stance?
No, they did. They spoke to us. It was so interesting. They spoke to us about kind of what happens when you do it, but also as who starts the process, what age and why. Yeah. And like I think it's sort of well known, exactly what you said. People are starting families later in life than ever before, and that does you can run into issues when that happens, men and women, and of any type of couple, or not. Like there are people obviously doing it on their own too, but that's what they've said, that there are, if they explained kind of the process. They explained who is doing it. And they also said, again, like I sort of mentioned it, that people are getting checked out earlier to see, how their fertility is. And that can be, that can help make a decision of when they're actually going to have a child without the usual or the traditional say, let's make a baby. It's just like, let's check our fertility and see where we are. It's really cool that you can do that, I think.
It's brilliant.
Yeah,
Is that like, that's becoming more accessible to people as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Like it's IVF in the latest budget. They announced that that IVF is going to be publicly funded, and it's the first time ever, which is it's a long time coming. People have been complaining about that for ages, so that's really good. It's such a step in the right direction because on rollercoaster.ie we have discussion boards. Rollercoaster's been going for 20 years, and the discussion boards are like a big part of it. And like the most active section is on fertility. It is hopping. There are people, primarily women. I'm not quite sure if there are men in it, but because it's anonymous. But it's like women getting together and going on through their cycles, they're called, together, having just getting support and help from people going through the exact same thing. So that's why we wanted to do the podcast episode on fertility, because it's just such a huge issue and a huge part of people's lives. It can be all consuming when you're going through it. That's why it was such a good episode, because it did go through the ins and outs in a no nonsense way again, just explaining the facts. Everyone's, I don't want to use that cheesy term, but I'm gonna journey through it is different. But knowing what to expect and knowing the facts, I suppose, before going into it and is really helpful. I think.
And is there a taboo about IVF as well? Like, in terms of, are people embarrassed to say they've used it?
I don't think so. Not anymore.
Good.
But yeah, good, really good, because I'm actually in a group that came from rollercoaster.ie of women who had babies in the same time. So I flew on in August 2022, and all the babies are 2 now. But so many of them had their babies through IVF, and we're delighted to tell people about it, because it was like their miracle come true, and it was a real, and they were all so appreciative of science as well, and just they wanted people to know that, to have hope, I suppose, because that's what IVF can give people who are struggling with infertility is this hope that it will happen for them. I'm not quite sure what any of the stats are or anything. I think that we might mention them in the episode.
Right.
But they're good. They're for some people better than not doing IVF, obviously.
Absolutely, yeah.
So,
I know somebody who opened a private clinic there recently. Trish O'Connor is her name. She was working. Her husband I used to work with, Shane, lovely guy, and she's just recently opened it up. So she's a huge advocate for it as well. I think you would hope that nobody throws their eyes up to it, that way. It's like, if it shouldn't be even a consideration. Just people, if they want a child, and I just know of couples that have gone abroad for IVF, and they've gone abroad because it's very, very cheap to do it in Prague and in Athens and stuff like that. So I hope with the new, as you said, the budget enrollment from next September, I think it is, that a lot of Irish couples now will be able to do it successfully. I know as well that there's couples out there that have been trying IVF. Look at Richie Sadler. His wife, they've been trying IVF for years, and then they conceive naturally.
It's amazing.
It's brilliant.
We also spoke to Rosanna Davison actually on our podcast, who had well known for having fertility.
Surrogacy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So she went through surrogacy with her first daughter, and was really open. She'd had, I think, 12 miscarriages
Oh, God,
before
love
they went down that road. Like, I know.
her.
So she'd actually she spoke to us about it in detail, but she didn't actually do IVF, I don't think, just because she was able to conceive. She was just kept on having the miscarriages, which is just, you know, tragic.
Yeah.
And then anyway, they went and did the surrogacy. She's a big advocate for, and had their little girl. And not long after that, she got pregnant and had twins.
With twins.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I know, like naturally,
It's like-
she conceived spontaneously, they call it. But it's such an amazing story.
Amazing, yeah.
I think as well, like, because I remember when Roseanne Davidson came out and she was speaking quite openly, as you said, about all of that. And I can remember seeing some of the reaction on social media from people who had similar, you know, experience of, like, you know, suffering tragedies with miscarriages and wondering would there ever be any hope for them, kind of thing. And then Rosanna's story obviously gave them an uplift and gave them that little kind of, and there were some people saying I'd never even thought of the surrogacy route, but they were going to get into it and everything. So in fairness to her, the profile she has telling her story has definitely helped a lot of people, and that's brilliant, you know.
Brilliant. It's so brilliant. And she is a really big campaigner for surrogacy, like rights in Ireland. So we cover it a lot on the site because we're quite passionate about it too. A lot of the kids who are born through surrogacy in Ireland aren't, like, both of their parents aren't always recognized as the parents because of how they were born. So that anyway, their campaign is is trying to change that, and it's well worth getting behind, because it's, you know,
absolutely. And she had
kids.
She had the situation there as well with the surrogate mother was from Ukraine, and she actually homed the woman. So that was good. Yeah. I remember an old sitcom I used to love in America called King of Queens, and they covered in the last season, they were trying to adopt, I think it was either a Chinese baby or a Russian baby, and because they couldn't conceive in storyline, so then they adopted, and then they conceived twins.
Oh, was that actually a storyline, King of Queens? I used to watch it, but I didn't watch that season.
I watch it. I watch it from start to finish at least once a year.
Do you?
Yeah, I love it. It's a real mood lifter. Like, it's
actually like it's one of those sort of cheesy sitcoms, obviously, but God, it's entertaining. Like, I remember I used to watch it when I lived in South Korea.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah, as a teacher, English teacher, before I got into media, and it's so random, but one of the TV stations that we'd pick up was for the Americans who were soldiers there, like, and had their base nearby, and it was just like basically American soldier TV. Anyway, going off point a bit, but one of the shows they show was King of Queens, so I basically just watched it every day for a year. And
that's amazing. Channel 4, it's still syndicated on Channel 4, and they show it on Channel 4 like 8 a.m. every morning.
Well,
it's brilliant.
I'm watching Peppa Pig at that time.
There's another question. Do you talk and give guidance on what programs you parents become infatuated with?
Yeah. Screen time. God, that's such a big one. We spoke about that with a few people on the podcast. Because it's always like, I know I'm letting them watch too much TV, but like, keeps them quiet. So I think you just have to go with it a bit. You know, I do remember like one good tip actually, and it was from going back to the sleep thing. Erica Hargaden was just advised, you know, definitely no TV for like 2 hours before their bedtime. And it kind of makes sense because they do advise that for adults as well, you know, so you're not too, you know, mentally stimulated at that time.
So at what point does the parenting evolve from, yes, known 2 hours before bed to, oh, here, look, anything for an easy life?
Yeah, I know. Well, it's so funny. You go through these phases. I remember when we recorded that episode, Fionn was a lot younger and he just didn't watch anything. And because he wasn't interested, I didn't realize that. I just thought he was doing what I wanted him to do. And then eventually he kind of just clocked it that TV was actually kind of interesting. So we showed nature shows. God, I sound like such a first timer. And and eventually, like, I don't know, he's just grown up and he's discovered Netflix, and we're kind of letting him just go with it because he's growing up in a world that he needs to be, computer savvy. And anyway, now we watch Peppa Pig, Shaun the Sheep, anything that's on Netflix. But the best show that adults will like too is Bluey. That is on Disney, and it's about a dog called Bluey. It's Australian, and
I've seen it.
It's so good. I showed my my sister and brother-in-law it like one night. Like, just said, if you want to watch a really good show, watch Bluey. So we just had a glass of wine and watched it. I'm like, I'm actually gone way too far in this.
That was the wine, Miriam.
Yeah, I know.
But you're right though, and it is interesting in terms of that piece around like what is too much screen time. And I think sometimes, like, I know, because like you hear people saying kind of like, oh well, I definitely didn't watch that much TV when I was a kid or whatever. And it's kind of like, yeah, but when we were kids, there wasn't that much TV. There wasn't screen time wasn't the thing when we were small. You know what I mean? So in a modern world, yeah, and like in a modern world with technology and like realistically, like kids who are kind of 2 and 3 at the moment, by the time they get to secondary school, they'll probably be on tablets and everything for school anyway. So yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of maybe, and again, speaking as a non-parent. But I'd probably take an overly simplified view, just kind of saying, yeah, I mean, don't park them in front of the TV 24/7. That's obviously not good. Yeah. But equally, we live in a digital world. They're going to have to learn, good digital and bad digital and kind of figure stuff out very early themselves. Like,
yeah. And like, definitely, like, people of our generation who grew up with that kind of the introduction of tech in our everyday lives, but while also having the memories of being out and with our friends and, and not having anyone calling us, having our parents like in our pockets, basically keeping tabs on where we are, because there's like no such thing and existed. But yeah, you're so right. Like they are growing up like that. You have to remember the balance. And you also have to definitely not let the screen be their babysitter as well.
Yeah.
We have a episode coming up in season 2 with a play therapist. Really interesting, because play therapy is a really great way to introduce therapy for a child if they need it, and also for helping children with additional needs and that kind of thing, and also for children who might be having difficulties for something like a new sibling. There's just loads of benefit to it. And she spoke about screen time as well and different things, but also just gave a tip that I really love, and I think parents will really like it as well, because she speaks about like short bursts of play, because some parents are just like as we were saying earlier, sometimes you just can't naturally want to play with a child, and you're kind of like, oh, I don't really like it, or what do I do? But anyway, she advised that these short bursts of connection with your child are just as valuable. You don't have to say, okay, we're going to go play Lego now, and force yourself. It can be helping, helping cook, sort of, having a little dance in the kitchen while you're doing it, and letting them sort of help you out a little bit in an appropriate way, obviously. But that was really helpful.
Don't hand them the butcher knife and ask them to chop
it. It was helpful.
Put the onions there, would you?
Yeah. But it meant that you kind of, as a parent, could give yourself a break a little bit, take the pressure off, think, acknowledge that you just don't have to be on the whole time, and let them play as well. Let them play in the corner and build the blocks or do painting or whatever, and don't interrupt them, because they kind of need that as well. So anyway, this is my therapy. Obviously, I got it from Haley, and that's actually a lot of that podcast episodes. Actually, probably most of them. Me and Evie always came out of them being like, oh my God, I feel like just lifted, so relieved to know that we are kind of on the right track, or at least we've the tools now to change things if we need to.
You kind of answered. I was about to ask, by doing the podcast, have you had, like, so you're recording the episodes of Little Birdie Told Me, have you had a kind of aha moment where, a guest says something and you're like, that makes so much sense now, and that's helped you as a parent, like?
God, loads of them. These moments, as I was saying, like, we always came out with something, little nuggets of information. But a huge one that Ewan and I actually talk about a lot was to do with being working mothers, actually, and the issue of childcare is huge in Ireland. I know, again, just going back to the budget, actually, and we spoke to Jennifer Whitmore about the budget for a special episode. She's the Social Democrats TD. Yeah, she's so interesting. Great insights. But so childcare now, as we know, like, it's really, really, really expensive. But the budget are now promising to reduce the prices for parents, like, by 25%, which is like a big enough chunk. Going in the right direction anyway. But we often talk about women sort of being the ones who still bear the brunt of parenting in the early years a little bit. If the child is sick, it's oftentimes up to the mother to sort of work it out, or going on long maternity leave. You're leaving your job for 6 months or 9 months, or, like, I was gone for a year. Luckily, I came back to the same job and everything. But anyway, sorry, roundabout way of saying that there was a guest. She was breastfeeding expert, actually, Kiva Whelan, who said to us that so many women, you're during those early years, you kind of have struggling through the parenting and working as a placeholder. You have to work because of paying for childcare, but what you're doing in so many ways is just keeping your job so that you can you throw yourself into it later, if you know what I mean. Sorry, I'm not explaining myself very well, but it was kind of a light bulb for me in the way that you have two jobs as a parent. If you're working, you are doing the career thing and also looking after your child and making sure that they're learning and going to crash and whatever. And when you're in that situation and you're trying to juggle it all, you can't fully focus on both of them at the same time. Anyway,
a friend of mine lives in Sweden, and she had 2 kids, but the maternity kind of benefits that her and her husband were afforded were just second to none. Like, if he didn't take up his full allocation, he was able to transfer it over to her. Like, so I think we do need to replicate some of those modules or models, particularly if our childcare is so expensive. If our childcare is so expensive, and you've got mothers going back to work after 6 months, they like mother or father should be afforded more time to get to know their child, and they shouldn't have to be worried about putting food on the table and stuff like that. And you're by giving more maternity, paternity leave, it's stopping people from trying to, afford childcare, because some of the costs my friends pay for childcare is a second mortgage.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
It is.
Crazy. A friend of mine recently is after getting an au pair because it's cheaper than childcare.
Yeah, I know people have done that too.
It's crazy.
Yeah, well, hopefully it's going the right direction with the budget things, but it's going to be slow. But we talk about the Scandinavian model a lot, which is sort of the paradise where childcare is concerned. But you're so right. I mean, and it needs to be equal as well. Like, it shouldn't just be on the woman. I think we're getting a bit better. We actually spoke to a stay-at-home dad, as it happens. Ross Good, if you've heard of him, he's a blog called The Stunted Papa. He became a stay-at-home father after learning he had heart disease. He's only 36.
I did see him. I seen him on TV before.
Yeah, I'm sure you have.
Yeah.
Really interesting guy, and like really cool story, and telling it from that perspective that can be possible. Like, it doesn't, if you have a traditionally heterosexual family with a mother and father, that maybe the dad can be the one to stay at home if you're going down that route. And
Miriam, can you tell us what's coming up in season 2?
Yeah, so I touched on it earlier. Hayley Rice is the play therapist. She gave like these lovely tips on how to give yourself a break, and also the benefits of play with kids. And we're talking to Rosemary McCabe. She is the broadcaster and journalist who she always kind of had this stance that she was never having kids, and then she moved to America and got married and had one. And it's such a good episode. She sort of has her kind of no filter in some ways talking about it, but like it's brilliant. So that's one that's coming up. Oh yes. So the Irish budgeting mammy, if you've heard of her, her name's Anne-Marie Gaynor.
I think I've seen her. She did like TikTok or Instagram or one of them.
Yeah, big social media following, because she's budgeting mammy. She gives tips on how to, financial advice and how to keep your, family afloat. And it's so pertinent now with the cost of living crisis and what's going on. Absolutely. So that was a brilliant episode as well. Gave loads of kind of practical tips, and we just discussed the cost of living thing. God, there's loads more. We have a genetic tester coming on talking about genetic testing before, and she's a scientist. Genetic testing before having babies, or when the baby is still in the womb. Oh, anyway, loads of really a diverse, cool range of guests coming up.
And when does it kick off? November, is it?
No, soon. Well, what's
11th of October now.
Yeah, so it's either this week or next week.
It's coming soon.
Coming very soon.
Check out rollercoaster.ie. Is it for?
Yeah, rollercoaster.ie. You can find it. You can find it on a platform there, but you can get it. You can find it anywhere you get your podcasts, and we ask that you subscribe, please, and. Check out all the older episodes. Like, they're still so useful. They're not time sensitive. Yeah. So
Brilliant. Well, Miriam Burke of A Little Birdie Told Me, thanks so much for joining us and having a chat about that. Definitely.
Thanks for educating too.
Exactly.
That's have no kids.
That's what I was about to say. It was definitely a learning experience for me anyway. And I'm delighted that somebody else who has had that kind of standoffishness with other people's children has shown that you can grow out of it. You can. So there's hope for me. Yeah. But anyway, Miriam, thanks so much for joining us, and all the best for season 2. We look forward to seeing what comes next.
Thanks, Miriam.
Thanks, Miriam. Again, that was Miriam Burke from A Little Birdie Told Me. Season 2 of that podcast coming up in the next couple of weeks. Go back to and listen to season 1 on rollercoaster.ie. A different podcast, but quite informative at the same time, Danny.
Yeah, there's lots of people out there who listen to us who have children, so could be useful to them, to myself and yourself. I mean, we could listen, we could be informed, we could learn from it, but we've nowhere to apply said knowledge.
And I kept saying, as Miriam was giving us some of the knowledge, I kept saying to myself, can I apply that to Suggsy?
And can you apply it to Suggsy?
I mean, he needs to stop watching the telly before going to bed.
That is true. Screen time,
Screen time, I couldn't think of it.
Yeah, play therapy with Suggsy may be beneficial to you. So,
Interesting nonetheless. Rollercoaster.ie, a little birdie told me, thank you to Miriam Burke.
Absolutely, yeah. Right, so that's it for this week, lads. We've a couple more weeks before we take a little winter holiday before I head over to the States. And we just, relax for a few weeks before we get into the mad Christmas period. And as always, we will be bringing you our now traditional Christmas special. Merrill's reacting to the Ireland score.
They took a throw and it's after going in, but I don't think it counts as a goal because they didn't touch anyone.
Score directly from throwing.
No.
Didn't know that.
It has to touch someone.
Oh.
So I think it's going to VAR.
Right.
No, it's not going to VAR. Didn't touch anyone.
Oh,
shit. Ireland saved the penalty. Courtney Brosnan saved the penalty. And it's
we're recording this on a Tuesday evening as Ireland women's team are playing Scotland team in the playoff stats, just in case you're wondering what we're talking about.
Yeah, the ball just went in and nobody touched it. I can't believe how Lily Agg didn't touch it there. Anyway,
right. Mero, if people want to listen to the previous 300 and odd productions that we've put out into the world through mediums like Spotify and Apple Podcasts and WTSpod.com and other places, where can they do? I've already answered your question. I don't know why I'm asking you. Just do the outro, will you? Just
the outro, which Phil O'Connor sent me an audio note earlier on, and he laughed thinking, he says, you definitely read a script in the outro. Phil O'Connor, up yours, I don't. If you want to listen to What's the Story podcast, you can go to WTSpod.com or you can search WTS Pod on any podcast provider. I use Podcast Republic. Danny uses Spotify, Apple Podcast, iTunes, whatever, anywhere and everywhere you can get a podcast. I do realize Apple Podcast and iTunes is the same platform, but anyway, until next time, Danny, he's at Danjo Murray on Twitter. I'm at Merrigan Mania on Twitter. Give us both follows. Until next time.
Clear eyes.
Full hearts.
Can't lose.
Too sweet.